guest speaker, Dr. Al-Qudah. As we introduced Dr. Ameen yesterday, he's mashallah, well-known speaker in North America. Dr. Ameen is a member of the AMJA Fatwa Committee, which is the Assembly of Muslim Jurists in North America. He also leads the Al-Qudah online university, Islamic University, and is also a member of Texas, as well as many other activities he's actively engaged in. Inshallah, he'll be talking to us for approximately an hour. And also one of the things that we shared last night is, alhamdulillah, Dr. Ameen has agreed to be a consultative member to the board of Ameen Housing, which alhamdulillah makes sure that going forward, everything we do, inshallah, will be compliant. So without further ado, I would ask the Shukran please come forward.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين اللهم نور قلوبنا بالعلم وزين اخلاقنا بالحلم وافتح بيننا وبين قومنا بالحق وانت خير الفاتحين اما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته وطبتم وطابكم وشاكم وتبواتم من الجنه منزلا باذن الله. Yesterday after Isha we started discussing the main topic that I was planned to discuss, which is interest-bearing loans or interest-bearing transactions in the U.S. And while preparing for this presentation, I was informed that I need to talk about the financial crisis in the U.S. from an Islamic perspective. And then after more and more communication, we ended up with focusing on the main topic, which is interest-bearing transactions in the U.S. Definitely make no mistake about it, that one of the major reasons behind the financial crisis that the American economy went through since 2008, and we are still struggling on that financial crisis, is the way that the mortgage business is designed. However, I will not go through the technical details of the financial crisis. I have chosen to proceed with the presentation that I started yesterday with more focus, more emphasis on the mortgage issue. Now, when we say that, alhamdulillah, Ameen Housing is trying its best to provide an Islamic housing for its members, what does Islamic housing mean versus the conventional one? Why we are saying that going with the conventional mortgage process is not allowed in Islam. Let me take those few minutes and just focus on explaining the mechanism that the mortgage business is done here in the U.S. When we say, for example, that so-and-so person has bought his house through mortgage, what does it mean? Okay. Now, from a Sharia perspective, we have to analyze any transaction, or reinterpret, or redefine it if you wish, and find out, is there any loan involved in it? Is there any sale contract involved in it? If there is a loan or there is a sale, does any of those two different transactions have any violations for the rules of that contract in Islam or not? Because as we explained yesterday, there are only two different transactions in Islam. Only two are subject to riba. Only two different transactions in Islam are subject to riba. And those two different transactions are Aqd al-Bay', the sale contract, and the loan contract. Aqd al-Dayn wa Aqd al-Bay'. It doesn't mean that every single loan contract is a riba one. It doesn't mean that every single sale contract is a riba one. It means simply that those two different transactions are subject to riba, meaning that they have some rules and regulations in which we have to make sure that we match those rules and regulations and standard stipulations, conditions, whatever you want to call them. If there is any violation for the rules of the loan contract in Islam, there any violation of the rules of the sale contract in Islam, it means that by default, automatically, without having a bad intention of being involved in riba, the contract that you are involved in is a riba one. ذلك بأنهم قالوا إنما البيع مثل الربا وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. This kind of misconception was existing a long time ago, when many people get confused between what's the difference. I go with Ameen Housing, for example. and they charge me 4.5% profit. If I choose to go with Chase, with Nationwide mortgage company, they're gonna charge me 4.5%. At the end of the day, I'm paying here 4.5 and here 4.5. What is the difference? You see, the difference is that here we are talking about معاملة مباح, a halal transaction, whether it is a murabaha or musharaka or diminishing partnership or ijara, while here we're talking about conventional mortgage. What is the difference between the two? Technically and fiqh speaking, this will be the main point that I will be discussing with you, inshallah, in those few minutes. Look at here the first slide. When we say again that a certain person has bought a house via conventional mortgage, what does this mean? How many transactions involved in this procedure? We have 3 different transactions. Again, from a fiqh perspective, we have not only one, not only two, we have 3 different transactions. Number 1 is a sale contract. We have a landlord, we have a buyer. So there is an actual sale contract. Is that true? Yeah, we have an actual, someone is buying a house from somebody else. So we have a sale contract. And number 2, we have a loan contract. When it comes to conventional mortgage process, you as a buyer or someone as a potential buyer has to bring a third party to finance. So there is a third party called the financier or al-mumawwil. Now, what kind of job the third party is doing to proceed with this transaction? Say, for example, that you have chosen a country-wide mortgage company. Okay. Upon the appraisal of the property that you are interested in, say it's worth $500,000. Okay. Now, their main job is to lend you money. But the only difference, and instead of handing the money to you, cash money, they would pay the price of that property that you're interested in, and you will be have to go to the landlord, and definitely they will ask for an amount of money that's way higher than $500,000 that they have paid on your behalf. The question here, are they buying the house or they are lending you the money? They are lending you the money. So this is the exact definition or nature of the loan contract. So there is a loan contract. The third party is lending you the money with a certain percentage as an interest. Without having the property sold to them or bought to them, without having any collateral. I mean, there is no risk involved. Outwardly there is no risk involved. It's $500,000 paid on your behalf to the landlord, and within the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, you have to pay those $500,000, $600,000, for example. So this is the nature of the loan contract, the interest-bearing loan. In addition to that, there is a third transaction that's called Aqd al-Rahan. Aqd al-Rahan means lien, put a lien on the property, or if you wish, mortgage. Now, the surprise here is that basically, if the mortgage is done, or the lien contract is done according to the Islamic definition of the lien contract or the mortgage, it's not only mubah, it's even sunnah. It is sunnah for the financier to secure his money by asking for a mortgage or asking for a lien. وَإِن كُنتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا كَاتِبًا فَرِهَانٌ مَقْبُوضٌ. Arihan means, believe it or not, means mortgage. So mortgage, the Islamic mortgage is not only halal, it's even sunnah. More than to be a halal, it's a sunnah one. However, it has to be done according to the Islamic law, the Islamic definition of mortgage, not the industrial or not the conventional one. So upon the agreement between the client, and the financier or the bank or the mortgage company will put a hold or a lien or would mortgage the property in order for the bank to secure his money. Now this transaction or this process is called mortgage. So the property is mortgaged by the financier. After you finish paying your whole amount of money, in our example, $600,000 for the next 20-25 years, then the lien will be just removed and you will be holding the title. That's called the clear title. Clear title means that there is no mortgage. I mean, this is the analysis of the mortgage procedure or mortgage process here in the US. I don't think we have any problem I don't think we have any problem with the sale contract. وأحل الله البيع وحرم الربا. I don't think we have any problem with the mortgage, the Islamic one, not the conventional one. Our serious problem is with what? Our serious problem is with the loan contract. With the loan contract. Now here is a question. If this kind of procedure is not allowed, how could we, quote unquote, how could we Islamize or permit the transaction? Here is actually what Ameen Housing and some other like Islamic housing companies are trying to do, which is to find an exit or a way or an Islamic alternative. Believe it or not, we have many options in Islam. We have many options to be an alternative for the conventional mortgage process. One of them is called Aqd al-Murabaha. Aqd al-Murabaha is very simple one. Upon you request as a client, the bank, whether it is a conventional bank or an Islamic one, believe it or not, it does not make any difference. At the end of the day, the most important thing that we have to make sure that it's there is the permissibility of the transaction itself. Even if the other party or the financer or the third party is a non-Muslim, even if he or she is a Christian or a Jew, even if it is a traditional bank, from a third perspective, we do not care. We do not care. Why we do not care? Because it has been proven that the Prophet ﷺ used to transact with the polytheists in Makkah al-Mukarram, with the mushrikeen, and those people used to, deal with riba. Is that correct? And when he migrated to Al-Madinah ﷺ, he used to transact with whom? With the Jewish community, and the Jewish actually are well known to be riba dealers. Yet it was never reported that the Prophet ﷺ has refrained from transacting with a non-Muslim, with a Jewish person or a mushrik, because the source or the resource of his or her money was a haram. Why? Because he wanted to teach us a lesson that our focus should be on what? On the soundness, on the genuinity, on the correctness of the transaction itself, regardless of the source of income or source of money. The other party that I'm dealing with, came from. Again, we do not care about it. This is from a pure Islamic or fiqh perspective. Back to the question: what are the different alternatives? We can go with Bay al-Murabaha. Bay al-Murabaha, if Ameen Housing, for example, want to go with, it's very simple. Upon an agreement between you as a client, as a customer, and Ameen Housing would proceed with buying the property. They have to buy it. In other words, the deed has to be held for a certain period of time by Ameen Housing, the financer. So at a certain point, the owner must be the financer himself. Now, what is the point behind being so strict in this point? Well, there must be a collateral. There must be a risk involved. When Ameen Housing, for example, own a house, there is still a slight possibility, Allah forbids, for any kind of damage or stolen property or any hurricane or whatever the damage might be. If there is a real loss, something has happened to the property before transferring the deed from Ameen Housing to you as a client. Who will be responsible for it? Who will incur the loss? It's Ameen Housing. And this is actually a very fundamental point, a fundamental difference between the conventional finance versus the Islamic one. This is the most important point. Whether it is murabaha or musharaka or diminishing partnership or ijara, whatever the mode of finance might be, there must be a real ownership. There must be a real ownership. Say, for example, that not Ameen Housing, a different company, they claim to work with their clients on a murabaha basis. Yet it was proven that the property was not completely owned by that bank, say XYZ bank. Well, the whole transaction, believe it or not, became a riba one. Why? Because there was no ownership. Where did we get this point from? From the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ نهى عن بيع ما لم يملك وعن ربح ما لم يضمن. Prophet ﷺ strictly prohibited Muslims from selling before owning. Hakim ibn Hizam came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked him, he used to sell before completely possessing the commodity or the merchandise or the inventory or the property. He said, Ya Hakim, O Hakim, لا تبع ما ليس عندك. Do not sell what you do not own. Again, what's the spirit, what's the message, what's the wisdom behind insisting on owning the property? It's all about the risk. It's all about the collateral. In a certain point, you have to be the owner. In order for you to justify or to legitimize the profit that you will be taking as an in-house from your client, you have to be the owner. There must be a collateral. You don't have to lose. You don't have to lose, but you have to take the risk of loss. You have to take the risk of loss. So if the ownership is not completed and finalized, then the whole transaction, believe it or not, it's not accepted. Back to Bay' al-Murabaha, two different steps. The first one, Ameen Housing must step in and buy the property, and after the completion of this process, by holding the title by Ameen Housing, they can resell, or they are expected to resell the property with a higher price to you as a client. $500,000 might become $600,000 for the 10 years. It might be the same result. It might be the exact amount that you pay for XYZ conventional mortgage company. Yet, the difference is that here, in this case, in the first scenario, the Ameen Housing has been done Islamically. There was a risk, there was a collateral, there was a true and genuine ownership, while with the other company, there was nothing of the above. There was just a conventional loan. Now, this is one track, one scenario. The other one, which is adopted by Ameen Housing yesterday, by the way, we had a meeting maybe for more than one hour discussing the model of Ameen Housing. They go with the following. They ask for a certain percentage as a down payment as a part of your ownership of the property. Is that correct? They ask for 20 or 30%, whatever the percentage might be. So they end up with buying the property jointly. And this is called musharaka. Musharaka means partnership. So at a certain point, the property that you are interested in will be owned jointly between you as a client and the Ameen Housing as a financing. Okay? And then after that, with a pre-agreement, you will be renting their share. For a certain period of time. So, say for example, if the fair rental value of the property is $1,000 per month, okay? Actually, you are owning 30% of that property. So if you want to keep just renting the property, you have to pay them how much each month? Only $700. But if you do so, you will not be able to buy their shares, which is against the mode of finance that they are adopting. That's why they ask you to pay the $1,000 in full. So $700 toward the rent and $300 toward the capital. You see? So you keep paying $1,000, keep paying $300 toward the equity of the house for a certain period of time until you reach to a point in which the whole property, or maybe 70-30, until you switch. You become the owner of 70%, they become the owner of 30%, and then they stop and make another appraisal for the property. It might be appreciated, it might be depreciated, and then they just terminate the joint ownership, and they give you the option. You either pay us in full, okay, the remaining of 30%, or otherwise you can just make another like payment plan, and this will be the end of the partnership between you and the Ameen Housing, which is Islamically acceptable if it is done appropriately. All those concepts are reflected in the contract signed jointly between you and the Ameen Housing. This is one scenario. The other one is what is called al-ijara al-mutanaqisa al-muntahiyya bil-tamlik. It's a diminishing partnership. It's slightly different from Ameen Housing one, which is to be, the property is to be owned completely by the financing. Say, for example, Ameen Housing. So they buy the property 100% with no down payment, with no partnership from your end. And they make a lease contract between you and them. Okay, with a very, very clear condition that if you are consistent for the following 30, 25 years or 30 years paying your rent on time, then the whole property will be transferred, the deed, the ownership will be transferred to you after 30 years for only $1. Is this model accepted in Islam or not? Yes, it is accepted. So we have different ways of that are called modes of finance. We have a lot of alternatives for the conventional mortgage process that is applied here in the US. نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيع ما لم يقبل. The Prophet prohibited from selling before possessing. You have to possess. What is the point? What is the spirit? What is the wisdom behind the possession? It's all about the collateral. It's all about taking the risk. When you own something, if something wrong happened to it, it gets stolen, broken, damaged for some reason, you are the responsible one. I mean, the liability will be yours. The collateral will be, you are not anybody else. By the way, it's not the case if you want to buy a foreclosed house. What does foreclosure mean? It means that in the past, someone has bought a house for a conventional mortgage. He or she defaulted in paying on time for 3 consecutive months, and consequently the bank took over the property one more time. Is that correct? So at a certain point, the bank became the owner. The bank became the owner of that property, and the previous or the initial client is just out of the property. Now, is it the job of the bank here in the US or any place in the world to be a business, person or business entity to buy houses and to maintain houses and to pay taxes and insurance and maintenance? The answer is no. Because the bank is a financial institute, it's not the business. It's not their job to build houses and to sell houses. However, because of the default of the client, the bank at a certain point ended up with re-owning or repossessing the property. So, if someone wants, for example, to buy a foreclosed house, okay, the bank will be given. Now, the bank is the owner, by the way. The bank became the owner. Okay, the bank will give you more than one option. You can pay cash in full and just get your house. This is one option. The second option, you can finance it through any other institute. If the owner is Chase, you can go to Capital or you can go to Countrywide and just finance for them. At the end of the day, they want to just get rid of the property because it's not their job to keep maintaining and paying tax and renovating the property. It's not their job. So the second option is to go through a third party to finance, buying their house. And the third option, which is the last one, is to finance through them. Say that Chase is the owner. You will be buying your house from Mr. Chase, and you will be financing it through Mr. Chase. Is that correct? Okay. Now, what is the difference between buying foreclosed house, buying and financing through Chase, versus buying just a house via conventional mortgage? There is a main difference here. The main difference is that in this particular scenario, the owner is the financer himself. The owner is the financer. Someone might ask a question, why Chase would obligate me, would mandate that a loan contract has to be signed? Why do not they just sell the property and that's it? The house worth, after the depreciation, after the housing, industry collapse, instead of being or worthing $500,000, it went down all the way to $200,000. Why do not they just sign a sale contract with you, just regular sale contract with you, and ask you to pay for the next 20-25 years? The answer is no. They can't do it. They can't do that, by the way. Okay? However, this is against the common practice of banks and mortgage companies here in the US. Their main job is to lend money. Their main job is to lend money. And by the way, one of the reasons behind insisting and asking you to sign a loan contract is that they resell the deeds. That's called securitization. They put the deeds together and just resell them to Freddie Mac or Freddie Mac or whatever the main financing company might be. In order for them to liquidate the business or to liquidate, they want to get their money back and just get involved in more and more transactional. So that's why, feasibility and business-wise, they do not allow you to buy the property without signing a loan contract with them. Now, with this in mind, do you think that the loan contract that you have to sign, if you want to go with this option, which is to finance through Chase, the owner and the financer, do you think that this kind of loan is a real one, a real loan, do you think that Chase is really interested in lending you some money to buy the property that is owned by Chase, or is it just a symbolic and nominal loan that is not meant by itself? It's just a paperwork you sign just to proceed with the transaction, because again, the house is like a pain for Chase. They just want to get rid of it. Now, this particular point actually caused a lot of disagreement between us, the members of the Fatwa Committee and Amjad. My very humble personal opinion is that this kind of loan is a nominal one. Although legally speaking it is there, but from a fatwa perspective it's not there. There is nothing called Aqdu Day. It's just the paperwork you sign. You do not get the money. You cannot make any decision with this money. I mean, this money is designated exclusively for that particular property. And the most important thing, in my opinion, is that you are borrowing, legally speaking, not fatwa speaking. You are borrowing from the owner of the property. So you end up with buying a house from Chase. Okay? You end up with buying a house from Chase. Instead of having real Mr. Chase, you have an entity called Chase. It doesn't make any difference. You are buying a house from Chase. So if the loan contract is mandated for you to sign in order for you to buy that property, to the best of my knowledge, I do not see honestly anything wrong with buying foreclosed houses as long as you are 100% sure that you are doing the closing with whom? With the owner and the financier at the same time. If you are 100% sure, then you can proceed with this transaction. And to the best of my knowledge, it's not a haram one. It is a halal one. Now, within the 7 different members in Amjad, I get another vote from Sheikh Walid Minesi. He voted for my fatwa. 2 or 3 members, they rejected the fatwa. They said, no, there is a loan contract involved. We can't ignore it. It's there. And 2 or 3, they just kept their opinion on hold. I mean, they did not adopt any position until now. So long story short, as they say, buying foreclosed houses, as long as you as a client, sure 100% the owner is the financer, is halal. Wallah. Until today, we did not change our mind on the Fatwa Committee. Everybody is still insisting in adopting what he adopted in the past. If you want to read more, go to our website to Amjad and just type foreclosure, and you will see the declaration of the Fatwa Committee in this regard. There is something else, a new law that's called short sale. Short sale means upon a friendly gentleman agreement between the client and the bank and the third party, somebody else who does not hold the same last name of yours. Okay? If you cannot proceed with your conventional mortgage, you cannot pay your monthly payment for the bank, or even if you can pay it, but you don't want to proceed because the market value of the property gets significantly decreased because of the financial crisis, because of the housing industry collapse, then you can bring a third party, and upon a mutual agreement with the bank, that third party can take over the loan. Now, this process by itself, I mean, the fact that you're bringing somebody else to replace you, paying the mortgage to the financer, after the change or the adjustment of the price, this is by itself is halal. I mean, there is nothing haram. However, it's up to the way that person will be paying to the original mortgage company. If it is done through a mortgage, like a loan will be given to him, then that's haram. If it is done like in a different way, then it could be halal. But short sale by itself, as a concept, is a halal. However, it has to be done until the financing or the financial procedure itself in paying for the bank or for the financer has to be done in a halal and not in a haram. Here is the fatwa that I referred to yesterday in Khutbah al-Jum'ah, which is basically was initiated by His Eminence, Dr. Usury, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him and extend his life. He changed his mind after maybe 15 or 17 years of insisting that buying houses via conventional mortgage is haram. And then later on he changed his mind. Upon changing the fatwa, a lot of scholars followed Shaik Yusuf and they adopted the same opinion. Briefly, he said that if there is no Islamic alternative and you need to take a conventional mortgage for residential purposes, to buy a house for you to live in, not for commercial purposes, then that is halal. It's not haram anymore. It became halal because of two different reasons. The first one, or two different justifications. The first one is that according to the school of thought of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, transacting in any void contract between a Muslim and non-Muslim outside the Muslim land or in Dar al-Harb, the land of war, is permissible. And yesterday I said that this approach by Abu Hanifa and his followers, rahimahullah jami'an, is not a correct one. It's not a correct one, with all due respect to the school of thought and the founder of the school of thought, Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. And the second reason, or the second justification, he said, there is a necessity involved. There is a necessity involved, ضرورة, or at least a desperate need, حاجة general need. With all due respect, there is no need to buy a house. I mean, the Shaykh, Hafidahullah, gets confused between inhabitation, like living in a shelter, an apartment, in a house, or whatever, versus buying it. So you consider, I mean, a second by itself, inhabitation is a problem, make no mistake about it. But here in the US, you can live in a house as a tenant, and you can just rent a house. So there is no desperate need, or there is no necessity, so to speak, to buy a house. So he said, a second ضرورة. Habitation is a necessity. Thus, consequently, buying a house with a conventional mortgage, if there is no Islamic alternative, is ضرورة. And here is actually the mistake that the Shaykh did. He said that buying a house is a necessity, which is not the truth. Which is not the truth. I have been personally living here in the US for more than 10, 11, maybe 12 years. I'm just renting a house. Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. I'm finding a place that is sufficient for me, for my wife, for my kids. So there is no need actually to jeopardize your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, assuming that buying a house is a necessity. There is no necessity, because the alternative is there. And this is one of the main reasons that Allah had the brothers in Ameen housing and all of you are providing the Islamic alternative. I mean, if I want to buy, that's fine, but it has to be done in an Islamic way, because again, over and over, there is no necessity involved in it. The necessary thing is to find a place to live in, and you can live in that place by just renting it. If you want to buy, that's fine. I mean, it gives more peace of mind for you and for the kids. Make no mistake about it, but it has to be done appropriately, according to the Islamic finance or modern finance, and not otherwise. Only in certain cases, only in very, very certain cases, it has to be taken on case-to-case basis. What if, just hypothetically say, that someone has a big household, okay? He or she cannot rent an apartment because of the restrictions that we all know in this country. If you have a certain number of people, then you cannot rent an apartment. That person cannot increase his income, or cannot afford renting a house, cannot move to a different place, and get stuck with the fact that you either get out of the apartment, okay? You either pay or you will just expel them out of the apartment. And there was no Islamic alternative. There is no way for him or her to buy a house, for example, or to rent a house Islamically. Only and only in this particular case, only and only for that particular person, buying a house with a conventional mortgage is halal. It is halal, because this is the actual necessity, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want you and your kids to be just thrown out in the street. But we cannot generalize it by saying, oh, okay, all or the whole Muslim community in the US, they are under this circumstance or situation, or something. We have, alhamdulillah, millions of people here living here in the US. Alhamdulillah, everybody has his own home or apartment or renting a house. Without having that serious problem that was delivered to the Shaykh, that this is what we are struggling here in the US. There was a kind of overstatement or exaggeration for the way that the situation was described for the Shaykh. So he thought at that time that there was a darura, and people are struggling, they are about to just be thrown out of their homes which is not the case. And that's why he generalized the fatwa by saying, okay, every single Muslim is permitted to buy a house via the conventional mortgage process if there is no Islamic alternative, which is definitely not the case. So the generalization of the fatwa is the problem, or is the disagreement part, or the disagreed part with Shaik Islam. While if it is taken on case-to-case basis, if someone desperately in need and he ran out of all the other alternatives, he was about to be thrown out of his apartment because of a big household or inability of affording something else, for that particular person, buying a house with a conventional mortgage would be halal, not for everybody who wants. This is briefly what I have regarding conventional mortgage, and I will be more than happy to answer any question or concern if you have. Please, the floor is open. I'll leave it to the organizers. How much time we have? Yeah.
Like University, Islamic University Fund, or other Divan, Lariba. I'm sure you have looked at their context, and what is your opinion on these different institutions? Because a lot of people claim that they have just switched the name, otherwise it's the same as the interest. Did I make my question clear? No.
Answering your question is about maybe another 1 hour. I can give you a brief answer that if there is a real ownership by holding the title by any of these companies who claim to be a Sharia compliant one, then whatever comes next could be negotiated. You see, if there is a real ownership, if the bank actually would really buy the property, own it completely, hold the title as an owner, not as a lien holder, then whatever comes next is subject to negotiation. Because as I said many times, that this is the main difference. This is the very, very fundamental difference between the Islamic finance and the conventional one. I don't want to promote any of these institutes, but some of them, they really do go through real ownership. They buy the property completely, they hold the title as an owner, and then upon a pre-agreement with their clients, they either rent or resell property for a higher price, with some conditions or minutes in the contract here and there that might affect the soundness of the contract. But it does not, render it to be a conventional mortgage one. Okay, with some exceptions. When it comes, for example, to La Riba, since you mentioned names, I have to answer the question. When it comes to La Riba, if you go to their website and read, they write beautiful statements that we buy the property joint with our clients. We assume that our client is renting our part on a demolition partnership. I mean, that's fine. When it comes to the legal contract that is binding for the two contracting parties, nothing of those concepts is reflected in the contract. If you read the contract, it's just a very, very conventional mortgage one. This is to certify that Mr. XYZ has bought such and such amount for an interest rate of 4.5% with the following condition. I mean, there is nothing mentioned about the musharaka or the demolition partnership. Now, when it comes to passing a judgment in any agreement, we should not care as students of knowledge. Okay? We should not care about the assumptions or what it mentioned or what it mentioned in the website. What we care about is what? Is al-aqd. Because al-aqd is Sharia contract. Al-aqd is the agreement, is the contract. If all these beautiful concepts are not reflected in the contract itself, then it defeats the purpose. Long story short, dealing with the riba, based on this explanation, is a pure and explicit riba. They call it la riba. It is the riba itself. So I'm not aware of any scholar that I know in person who believes otherwise. I mean, there is a there is a unanimity within at least the members of the Fatwa committee that dealing with this company is prohibited because they do not have anything called musharaka or diminishing partnership. Now this is one company. The other one is guidance, residential guidance. Guidance is not as bad in their model as the riba. They do get involved in partnership. They ask for I think 20% down payment or 20% ownership by the client and 80% by guidance. They get involved in real ownership for a certain period of time. When it comes to making a closing, they do buy the house jointly with their client. So at a certain point, the deed will be held by guidance and by you, for example, as a client. Now, up to this point, the partnership is a genuine one. We have two different entities, two different people are holding the property jointly. However, when we claim, or when the guidance claim that we are the partners of our client, there are some consequences. I mean, if we are buying a property jointly, okay, I own 80% and you own 20%. When it comes to taxes, I have to pay 80% and you pay 20%. When there is a maintenance, I have to share 80% and you pay the remaining 20%. When there is maintenance, tax, and insurance, we have to share the expenses in the same way that we share the profit if there is any profit in the future. Unfortunately, they do nothing from the law. Oh, it's your property, you are the one who is residing or living in it, and that's your job, that's your responsibility. Well, this is against the spirit of partnership. If we are partners, then we have to prove on the ground that we are partners. Worse than that, if you choose to terminate the contract without being obligated by the state or by the city, then they obligate you by law, by the contract, okay, to pay them in full whatever has been paid for your property. They paid on your behalf, for example, $300,000. After 3, 4, 5 years, you want to move from California to a different. So you want, long story short, you want to terminate the contract. They obligate you to pay them back. I mean, after selling the house, you have to pay them back the $300,000 that they paid on your behalf, regardless of the actual market value, whether it is depreciated, appreciated, increased, they don't care. So if the capital or the amount that they paid on your behalf is guaranteed by the contract, if there is no real contribution toward any expenses of the property, then the spirit of the partnership is not there anymore. Thus, consequently, I do not recommend this contract at all. Along with my Shaik Salah al-Sawi, highly recommend Muslims not to get involved with this company because they claim to be partners, but in reality, they are not partners. Their capital is guaranteed. Whenever you change your mind, you have to pay them in full, and they do not share any expenses with you whatsoever when it comes to tax or maintenance or insurance. So the partnership is not a real one; it's just an umbrella, and that's why actually, dealing with guidance is the misguidance, unfortunately. So la riba is riba, and guidance is the misguidance for Allah. Divorce banks, since many people ask about divorce bank, to the best of my knowledge, they do buy the house. They have two different models. They have ijara and they have murabaha. Murabaha, they do a closing for the first time, so they become the owner of the property for a certain period of time, and then they resell the property or do another closing again in the same day. If you live in Chicago or in Illinois, if you live outside the state, Illinois, they delay the closing for the next day. So the procedure itself, sounds good. With some points here and there that might raise a question, like for example, the late fees. Okay, this is a concern, but again, it does not negate the whole contract, as well as the penalty. Like if you, not the penalty, like the discount. Like if you choose to pay before the time, they will be discounting, they will be decreasing the amount. I mean, this is a debatable point, but it does not affect the genuinity or the soundness of the whole contract. For Muslims who live here in the US, if you have two options, either to go with the conventional mortgage or to go with the murabaha by D1, I would say that going with murabaha is less risky than going with the mortgage. Is it the real and the genuine and the sound way of financing? The answer is big no. No, it's not. No, it's not. To be frank and honest with you. But to be practical and realistic, this is the only option here. This is the only option here. Because honestly, the amount of risk and collateral is almost down to zero. Sometimes if they do the closing, two closing in the same meeting. The first closing, the one bank becomes the owner. And the second closing, immediately they transfer the deed from the one bank to you. So honestly, it's really, really hard to digest it, but we have to digest it. The ijara one actually is more sound than the murabaha because they do buy the property. They hold the title jointly with their client, and then upon an agreement, they do like a diminishing, partnership. You start renting their share on a periodical basis until you reach to a point in which you become 100% owner and there is zero owners of the property. That will be the end of the partnership with them. Islamic University Bank, they have a murabaha, they have a ijara. Their ijara is good enough, and their murabaha is not good enough. They put a lot of conditions in the murabaha. I remember a few years ago, I spent 10 working hours, reading the contract from A to Z, word by word, concept by concept, with Dr. Ahmed Shaik. He was a professor. We were teaching together in Islamic American University. So we spent 10 hours reading the contract from A to Z. We found out that the conditions that they put in the murabaha made it clear that the client is not the owner of the property. I mean, they restrict the ownership. They keep you with tight hands. You can do nothing whatsoever. And this is actually against the spirit of murabaha. The property is mine. Okay? And the only thing that I have to commit to is just to pay you on time. So they put some conditions in the contract that make it very clear, very obvious that you are not the owner. They are the owner. See, until you pay them, and for which is against the murabaha. And that's why I do not trust their murabaha, while their ijara is good enough for Allah. Ijara loan. Loan is a ijara loan. Did you hear about ijara loan? Ijara loan does come Shaik. Ijara loan is a different story. Ijara loan, they according to them, they convert the conventional loan into an Islamic one. So if you want to deal with them, they are not the lender. They are the broker or the one in between. So they are not the real decision maker. They do not have money, and thus they do not have they do not make decisions. So if you want to finance through ijara loan, they ask you to go to any conventional bank and apply for a loan. Get your loan approved by the bank, and then after you declare a war against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Prophet by dealing with riba, they just bring their magical solution and they just Islamize the transaction. It's honestly, it's really, with all due respect, it's really ridiculous. And I told them many times that this is not the right way to finance. It is not the right way. I mean, this model might work for someone who is already involved in conventional mortgage, already, declared the war against Allah and His Prophet, and then he wanted to repent, he can maybe refinance with them, that's fine. But to start the mortgage process with them from the beginning is not allowed, because you will be falling in the same mistake or the same sin that you are trying your best to stay away from. You have to finance, conventionally with a mortgage and get your loan approved, and then they get involved and just make a trust and put you as a trustee with ijara loan. It does not make any sense whatsoever. So dealing with ijara loan is not allowed. Did I answer the question? Can I sit down now?
We have 15 more minutes of question and answer left, so Please raise your hand if you have a question. Right now there are 2 folks in pipeline.
Thank you very much. I think I take this endorsement for Ameen Housing Corporation. I believe what you just spoke and what you explained in your presentation. I have 2 quick questions. One is that you explained about the foreclosure properties, in which you said that the bank is the owner, but eventually they transfer the loan to some other entity. But if, as a buyer, if I convince them and they said, okay, they will stay as an owner, and I purchase the property, and later on they change their mind because their organizational structure changed, somebody else comes and all that, then what do I have to do in that position? And number 2 question I have is that...
Before you go to the second question, they do not allow you to sign a sale contract.
Without that.
Now, legally speaking, they are authorized. They can do whatever they want. I mean, they can, legally speaking, I mean, the rules and the regulations in the US, allow banks to sign a sale contract with you without signing or without accompanying the sale contract with a loan money. But business-wise, they refuse to do it. Because again, they resell the deeds. I mean, they securitize the deeds, put them together and sell them to Freddie Mac to get their money back. So feasibility-wise, it's not feasible for them just to wait for your money for the next 20 years. That's why they refuse. No way for you to sign a... I wish I would love to convince them just signing a sale contract, so just to make the transaction pure with no doubts here and there. But honestly, they don't.
So the second question I have, that you explained that with the Ameen Housing, that you start with a 30-70 partnership and eventually you flip. You become the 70% partner, Ameen Housing become the 30% partner as you pay off your principal amount over time. And then you mentioned that when you become 70% partner, then Ameen Housing actually draw in the contract and it transfers the property into your name, and then you have a rental agreement until you completely pay off the principal amount. Is that 70-30 limited by some Sharia law, or it is just a arbitrary number for?
Just a precaution from Ameen Housing to make sure that they are charging you the right amount. Because after 10, 15, 7, 8 years, Allahu Alam, the market value of the house might be changed, might be adjusted. I mean, could be appreciated, could be depreciated. So in order for them to make sure that they are charging you the right amount, in order for them that they are securing or looking for the best interest of the investors of Ameen Housing, they ask for reappraisal of the property and see how much it's worth. Are they charging you the fair amount of money or more or less? So if the market value goes up, they charge you more. Not they charge you more, they ask for more amount of money. And vice versa, if the market value went down, then they will be readjusting the capital that they are asking for. In most cases, actually, the property gets up. Why 70 and 30%? It's just ijtihad. Just like as I said, it's just a precaution to make sure that they are charging the fair amount and they are securing, a fair profit for their investors. Why they ask for the termination of the partnership? They just want to get their money, get some cash money to reinvest one more time and to serve other Muslim members in the community. Can they just continue as is until the end of the contract, until you become 100% and their share is 0%? Yes, they can, but they prefer otherwise, just for business purposes, which is fine. Yesterday, I made a commitment with the Ameen Housing to help them, as a Sharia advisor. I did not read their contracts in full. So up to this point, I'm not adopting any position with a yes or no for Ameen Housing, but from the way that I have heard the presentation, which is not enough by the way. As a student of knowledge, I have to read the legal documents, the contract, and based on what is written, I can say yes, this is a halal contract, or this is a haram one, or it has to be adjusted. But I highly appreciate the opinion of my Shaik Salah Al-Sawi. He was here, I think, 1 or 2 years ago, and he heard the same presentation, he recommended, a few things to be made, and he made it clear that a certain thing has to be adjusted. According to the brother, to the board that I met with yesterday, they did what the sheikhs did. So up to this point, up to date, I didn't read the contract. I don't adopt any position. Most probably, Allah, the contract will be a sound and a halal. Inshallah, I will make it clear, like fatwa regarding dealing with housing. Inshallah, whenever I read the documents and review it with my brothers, inshallah, and the board.
I'd like to revisit your opinion about foreclosure. My understanding of foreclosure is that when you approach a bank, the assessment of the property is done by a professional third party. They come up with a snapshot of the property value, and when the payment is determined, it's determined as interest payment. It's not installment. The calculation of the payment is done through a mathematical model based on compound interest, and they inform the buyer of that, and they give you options of 15 or 30 years of payment based on interest options, and the contract says interest, and everything in it is based on interest. So the fact that the bank owns the property does not preclude that the buyer is paying through an interest contract. So I would like to comment again on the steps that I
Yeah, sure.
the second question.
Did you attend my presentation yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you remember what I said that العبرة في العقود بالمقاصد والمعاني لا للألفاظ والمباني. It's considered in transactions in Islam is the spirit and the actuality of the contract, not the name of the contract. Not the name. I mean, whatever terms we are using in the contract do not change the reality of the contract. And I will give you an example. If I have a car, I want to sell a car for $5,000 cash, or for $6,000 for 1 year. Is that halal or haram? I have a car, $5,000 cash. If you want to give me $5,000, take the car. Or otherwise, if you want to finance with me, this car is for $6,000 for 1 year. You make a payment every month. You pay me $6,000 and I will transfer the deed to you. Now, is this transaction, I'm giving you those two options, is haram or halal? It's halal. It is halal. Okay? But what if I want to call the $1,000 extra? I want to call it interest. Okay? If you want to finance with me for 1 year, there will be an interest of $1,000. So you end up with paying me $6,000 instead of $5,000. Do you think that calling the $1,000 extra money, calling it interest, will make the whole transaction haram? The answer is no. Why? Because العبرة في العقود بالمقاصد والمعاني لا الألفاظ والمباني. Now, overall speaking, if Chase, for example, is asking for a closed house, $300,000 plus interest, $100,000. The interest that is mentioned or included in the contract is the profit that Chase is making out of selling this property for a long period of time, even though they call it interest. Now, from my perspective as a Muslim, or at least my personal understanding, is that it's not interest. I mean, Mr. Chase is selling you a house for 10 years for $400,000, cash for $300,000. You take it or leave it. See? So even although it is called interest, but actually it's not. It's just a profit. Let them call it interest. Likewise,
I think it's beyond what they call it. It's calculated as interest, and the buyer informs the seller because it's by law. It's the truth in lending.
That is up to a certain limit. That's correct, and that's why we have 3 different members in our fatwa committee. They said no, your opinion is wrong because there is a wrong, and they clearly stood against my fatwa. They said no, this transaction is haram because there is a wrong. So this is just to support what you said. Now, my personal opinion is that the nature of the loan contract is just an nominal. It has no reality. And that's why I just overlooked the fact that you have to sign a loan contract that I said the transaction is haram. Because I'm looking to the overall, the big picture. Chase has a house, I want to sell it. But the way that they conduct their business is that they have to associate the sale contract with the loan contract. I do not consider this loan contract as a real one. It's not meant by itself. In other words, Chase is not interested in lending the money. Chase want to just sit with the house that they do not want to keep anymore. They want to just get rid of the house. In order for them to proceed with this transaction accordingly without violating the common practice of banks in the US, they ask you to sign the loan. And that's why I said that the nature of the loan is just nominal. It has no reality. But what you said is definitely correct, and that's why you have 3 members who said no, this transaction is not correct. Which one is the right opinion? Allah, to the best of my knowledge, my opinion is correct.
Okay.
I might be wrong.
Okay, we'll leave it there. The second quick question, which is more of a common question. I think, in my opinion, as a private member of the Muslim community in North America, I think our scholars are a little too soft on the various scenarios that were brought up that, in my opinion, are decoy and some of them actually amount to scams. I quote what one
They are very what, I'm sorry? Very soft, you said?
Yes, being very soft. I mean, I quote one of your
Which
colleagues.
is good, alhamdulillah. They want me to be very harsh. Say alhamdulillah, they're very soft.
Well, not soft on me, but soft on them. I think I quote one of your colleagues, if you know him, Professor Mahmoud Jamal. He's an economics professor at Rice University. And
I know him in person, by the way, because I live in Houston.
Yeah, so
He's a friend of mine.
So he calls them quote unquote false advertising. So in my opinion, as a private member, I think these are scams. They have big leaf fatwas, and this is some sort of a different hand. And one reason why we're struggling here in new housing is that there are all these decoy models that are sucking out potential supporters and investors in our model. So maybe if our scholars start the big picture, that we need to support the organizations that adopt models that are sincere and really adhere to the Sharia model. So creating a public opinion would help a lot, and that would help us also create an alternative.
That's what I'm doing. Inshallah, I'll be volunteering my time to work with Ameen Housing to promote their business.
So
Are you happy now with me?
I commend that, but I would like to see more of that.
You just tell me what to do, inshallah, I will do it. Inshallah.
So we'll see more effort from your side and creating a public opinion that.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair. I'm just kidding, go on.
I have a simple question for you, Shaik. I have a very simple question for you. If you invest money in the bank nowadays in the saving account, you don't get much profit, probably 1% or 2%.
I cannot hear you.
If you invest money in the bank nowadays, probably you get 1% or 2% interest nowadays. But if you invest in the Ameen housing, what do you get? Approximately.
The comparison actually is, to start with, is not fair enough because you are comparing between haram and inshallah halal. Again, I didn't make any declaration regarding dealing with Ameen housing. I did not read the contract. I didn't know what's going on. Legal speaking of the contract, I didn't read anything. But assuming that, alhamdulillah, inshallah, and hope inshallah that everything will be going smoothly and their contract is a halal one, there is no way to compare between haram and halal. You cannot say, for example, which one is more delicious, eating beef or pork. Well, for us Muslims, we cannot say that pork is an option for us. So for you as a practicing Muslim, investing with the bank, having a saving account, is not an option for you. Now leave aside the feasibility and the profitability of dealing with the halal. What we believe in is that يمحق الله الربا والصدقات. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will demolish the barakah and the blessing from any haram investment, even if it might look otherwise. So I'd be more than happy even if the bank offers me like 5% and investing with the Ameen housing 3%. I will definitely go with the 3% because it is halal, it gives me a peace of mind. When I put my head up and go to sleep, I will sleep like a child. I can't do anything wrong. Versus having a lot of money in a haram way for me as a practicing Muslim, it's not even an option. I'm not negotiating the percentage. I'm just discussing the concept itself. Halal investment, I'm into it. Haram investment, it's not an option. Jazakallah khair.
When will you be able to study the legal aspect of it?
As soon as possible, inshallah. They will give me a copy of the result.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah for the very educational presentation. I have a quick question. Are 0% loans for all or 0% loans that they advertise? 0% loan.
0% on the
Yes, I'll discuss inshallah tonight.
Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Two quick questions. First one is about, you said the Ameen housing first, they buy the house and they lend it to you. You start two contracts in one. And the second is haram. First contract is buying the house, the second contract is loaning the house. You rent the house from them. You start two contracts in one. The question is, can I buy the house with Ameen housing without having to rent it from them? That's my first question. Second question is about musharaka.
Let's go quick.
Yes.
One more question. Not every single combination of two contracts together is haram. If you are referring to the saying, to the hadith, نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيعتين في بيع. وصلى prohibited from having two different contracts together. That is true, but it has certain applications, certain cases. Having two different contracts that are contradicting with one another will be prohibited. For example, you are interested in buying my car. Okay? If I tell you, I will sell my car to you if you rent me your house, that's not allowed because I'm intermingling two different contracts that are different in their nature together. Okay? You will not buy my car unless you rent me or lease me your house. This is one example for bay'atain fi bay'. See, if there is a bay'atain fi bay' that serve the main purpose of the contract itself, like what is the main purpose behind dealing with Ameen housing? It is to own a house, but they set it in a way that goes, two steps: buying the property jointly, and then upon mutual agreement, you start renting their part. So it is a sale contract and the lease contract are coming one after another in a pre-agreement. And both of them actually are serving the same purpose, which is ending up with owning a house. Those are two different contracts at the same time, but they are not included in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. See? So not every single combination of contracts together are prohibited according to Islam. It has certain applications. Certain cases, it is still halal. Like for example, in Bukhari and Muslim, and the Prophet has sold his camel to Jabir واشترط I think ركبته إلى المدينة. So the camel was sold. The seller was the Prophet and the buyer was Jabir. The Prophet put a condition that you will not get your camel until I arrive to Medina. See, although it's Jabir's, it's not the Prophet's anymore. Yet there was a condition that served, the interest of the Prophet ﷺ, which is to take the ride all the way to Medina. So this is bay'un wa shart. Okay, I mean if you are referring to this hadith, نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن بيعتين في بيع. Is this the hadith that you are referring to? وعن بيع وشرط. Well, the Prophet ﷺ who prohibited the sale contract and the shart, which is a condition, is the one who did the sale contract, and the same one put a condition with it, like hadith Jabir. So it has certain applications. I mean, we cannot generalize the rule by saying, okay, every single two different contracts getting together is haram. No, this is not correct. Is that point clear?
Yes. One more question. You said earlier that when you buy a house, for example, through Ameen Housing or similar institution, you share basically you share basically you pay taxes together and repair together, but it's not the case with Ameen Housing. Ameen Housing, when you buy the house, even though you own only a small portion of the house, you are responsible for paying full amount of the property tax and also for the.
What I was told yesterday is otherwise. The main expenses are shared by Ameen Housing and by their client. If there is like a wear and tear, something insignificant like faucet, $50 or $100, something very insignificant. They put in the counter that from a certain amount and up, they will be sharing the expenses, which is an application of the real partnership between Ameen Housing and you as a client. So I think your information is inaccurate, and I would love to hear from the brothers.
Yeah, we have.
So for any Ameen Housing related question, just wait for Brother Ilyas to come in and his presentation.
Did what I say, I think, correct? That Ameen Housing does share the expenses. That is a significant maintenance.
Yes, we identify that as a major and minor, so I'll explain that.
Right. Is that much clearer?
I have a question, as I asked it last night too. Is it permissible to have take money from 401k and then pay it back monthly?
We'll discuss inshallah after the presentation.
Can I present?
Yeah, inshallah, after
Okay, the next question is that, for example, our masjid is...
I wish we can have one conversation, please. Yes, Sister Jordan.
Okay. Other questions regarding the conventional loan. Like some of our masjid is bought by a conventional loan. Is that halal or haram, or we have reason sometime to have conventional loan?
I didn't get the question.
Some of our masjids in our community are bought by conventional loan, meaning could be Chase, could be Wells Fargo, because our community did not have the whole full amount of money to buy cash. So we paid by time, for 5 years, it was 10 years, whatever it was. So is that okay to do that?
No, it's not. If someone gets involved in buying a house via conventional mortgage process, then he or she did something wrong.
I'm talking about the masjid.
Masjid was bought by a conventional loan.
Masjid was bought through mortgage? Yeah, that's wrong. This is not allowed. So the decision was, the decision was a wrong one. The one who made the decision of proceeding with buying a masjid or a house or any property, the conventional mortgage is haram, with one exception that we need to be aware of. If there is no way practically to preserve the invested amount in a certain property, okay, except by being involved in mortgage, then preserving the property will be counted as a necessity. You see? For example, if I invested, say for example, $20,000, I already put the down payment in a house, okay, in a halal way. And then just hypothetically say that there was no way for me to preserve those 20,000, okay, without, I ran out of option. There was only one option, which is to go through a mortgage process just to proceed with buying the house. And preserving the original amount that has been invested is counted as necessity. المحافظة على أصل المال من الضرورات. المحافظة على أصل المال من الضرورات. We made a fundraising for the masjid. Okay, we paid 10 or 20% of the property of the masjid. Okay, and it was clear between us and the landlord that we have to make the closing and pay in full in 3 months. Otherwise, the property will be foreclosed. I mean, it will be repossessed by the owner. We did our best. We did another fundraising, a third fundraising. We tried here and there. We ran out of all options, and we came up to the closing date. Okay, either we pay in full and preserve the 20% already invested in the ground, or otherwise the property will be gone, will be repossessed by the owner. If this is the case, in this certain scenario, then go to the closest mortgage company, just sign a deal with them to make the closing and to pay in full will be permissible. That's called المحافظة على أصل المال من الضرورات, because you already invested somewhere. And if you do not do so, then whatever you invested will be just wasted, will be gone. So in this particular scenario, dealing with mortgage will be permissible if it is the only option you left with.
Very educational. So from an investor point of view, I have a question. Let's say I invest an amount X. So by the guiding principle, I'm not just an investor, I also assume liability, right? Because I'm co-ownership of a small equity along the other folks in the Ameen Housing Cooperative. So my question is, how much liability does an investor own in addition to the investment he puts? Right? What's the liability? I put out an amount, let's say it's $10,000. If there's something happens to a renter or whatever, right? Will that come back to the investment? That's through the court case.
There is an ideal situation and there is a practical one. The ideal situation is not to go with murabaha at all, because the murabaha model finance would minimize the risk to become almost zero, especially when it comes to the one bank model. You do two different closing at the same time, at the same table. You do a first closing for the one, and the second closing for the resale property in the same color. This actually on the ground, this minimizes the risk to be almost zero. So it's not the ideal option, so to speak. However, it is tolerated because this is the only option we have as Muslims here in the US, providing that the other alternative is to go with the conventional mortgage. And that's why the genuine and the sound partnership in Islam or ways of finance is to go with mudaraba or with musharaka. Musharaka means partnership. You stay partners all the way down until you finish buying the shares of the other partner. This is a long run, a long tail partnership with the sharing of the responsibilities, like the profit and the loss. This is the genuine and the ideal partnership we are looking for. However, it's not practical. It's not, and that's why many Islamic banks they prefer to go with the less risky one, which is murabba. You just do a first closing, second closing at the same table, and that's it. Which is something that actually makes the partnership or the model finance very inconvenient from a fiqh perspective. However, we have to just digest it because again, the other alternative is to go with the conventional model.
So basically, if there is a renter who makes a case, he puts a case against Ameen Housing, the investor get paid as well, basically. Right? It's liability. Right?
That's what I'm sorry?
How much liability does an investor?
They stay partners with you until you own 70% of the property, and there is no time limit. You can finish your payment, the 70% in 1 year, in 1 month, in 7 years. They give you just a peace of mind, a lot of flexibility, because the main purpose is to serve the Muslim community.
Yeah,
it's not a profitable business for them as board of trustees or boards of directors, meaning that they are not making profit for themselves. They are looking for the best interest of their investors. While those individuals who are running the company, they all are not benefiting themselves from this work. You see my point here?
Yeah, but so the liability will be there as investors, basically. If
They stay actually liable until you finish 70%. As I said, I mean the partnership, the real partnership is there. They stay your partners all the way until you finish paying 70%. If there is a loss, they will share it with you. If there is a profit, like increase of the market value, they share it with you. This is the real partnership that we're looking for.
Okay, I'll probably ask you offline. Thank you.
Jazakumullah khair. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so at this time I will ask for the class to come in.
Again, I welcome everybody and I thank Shaik. We were fortunate and blessed that the Shaik was among us and enlightened us and educated us on a lot of issues that we had. On top of that, he volunteered to help us also. So again, I appreciate and thank you, the Shaik. He didn't have lunch yet. So. Before I start, we shortened our presentation because that's every year almost we do the similar presentation. Means that Ameen housing, how it was created, and share the facts over the last year. So that's why, because of the Shaik was among us and want to give as much time as possible to have the questions and answers with him. First of all, before I start, I'm going to ask all the board members to identify themselves so people know who they are by face. Muhammad Al-Azza, Brother Mustafa, everybody knows. Brother Ahad in the back. Brother Hassan, everybody has seen many times, he's in the back. And Brother Humayun he was here, so he didn't get out. Brother Fawzi is also in the back. These are the folks who are helping Ameen Housing and you. And everybody is volunteer. So just want to make sure that when you see them, don't get angry. Thank you them. That the only reason they are here is to get their reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some of the questions that you had regarding the Ameen Housing, I'll explain those once we go through the presentation. I'll be quick on the presentation because all I want to do is share the facts of what happened last year. So we have, like everybody knows, we have 2 paid employees. Those are consultants, Salma, that probably each one of you, one time or the other, has talked to her, or through email or through telephone. Salma Aziz is the office doing everything. You can call the secretary or the manager, but she's the one on doing all the communication between you and us. The Mahmoud is the accountant who will help us with the accounting monthly and annually, and also doing the taxes. The Fakri is our web master who will take care of our pages. We have done in the past also, we continue looking for the marketing help. We had it before. If you remember, Hanif, he was our marketing manager, and we are still looking for part-time. We cannot afford full-time, so we still look for part-time. I think, who is here for the first time? Okay, MashaAllah. MashaAllah. So, Ameen Housing was founded in '96, and since then, there are a lot of board members has changed, and we have the few people still among us who have a whole history. But if you go to the web, there's a lot of information there that the only reason they come together and try to create the organization because there was not any other organization was available. So they decided to create the organization as possible and as close to the Sharia that they can do within the means they have. The only funds that we receive is from the members. So this is our whole investment is coming from only the Ameen members. You have to be a member in order to either purchase the house or invest anything. In order to purchase the house, you have to be a member first. So that's the ground rules. Since we have no other sources except the members, we can say 100% that's coming as a halal, and it is halal to invest. And we only allow the members to buy the house. So you have to be a member. And in addition to that, at this point, we only allow house to be purchased for living there, not for the rental. So that's not the commercial. Right now, we don't do that. So only for the, as a primary residence. You have seen that we have the election today for the 4 officers. We have 7 in total, and the term is 2 years. So the 3 that did not, you did not see their names in today's election, they'll be up for election next year. So there's a 2 year terms, and because, and I want to say that, because of the lack of action or involvement, we did not get any nominations. So I don't want to say that, but you're stuck again with those 4 for 2 years. Right. So we want you to involve, and then we want you to provide the feedback, all the information, or come in and help us. But the term is 2 years, and the 4 that has been elected, they're going to be here for 2 years. And like I said before, there's no monetary compensation for any board members. There's all their time, travel, and everything else is volunteer. Now, if you have seen last year, also a few years ago, when there was a turmoil, to date, we issue a dividend every quarter, and average is 1%. So 4%, 5%, 7%. You can see the brochure. We have annually information. The data is there. To date, alhamdulillah, we always been profitable. We always declare the positive dividend, and that's by itself is telling you that it is a good investment, and also there's at the same time you're helping your brothers and sisters to buy the house and then avoid the river. The dividend is quarterly dividend. In order to receive the dividend, the money has to stay the whole quarter. Sometimes we promote that, all right, the 5th of the month will be fine, but that's when we say that, we're only talking about the start of the quarter, January to March, and so forth. So as long as that money is there for that quarter, you'll get a dividend. The flexibility of funds withdrawal, that normally if the member requests the withdrawal, if it's a small amount like under 10,000, we probably a day or two, same day or next day, we provide the check. If there's a larger amount, 100,000, 200,000, we negotiate, because it all depends on the funds available. We don't keep the money, we try to invest as soon as possible so that we can get the money. Okay, so this was one of the questions about the sharing the maintenance and maintenance type, not the as a true maintenance like you're changing, you're keeping up the property, not getting it damaged. So the homeowner, this slide is for the covers the homeowner process, sort of. That we buy the property, and obviously that the responsibility is on the homeowner that look for the property and then get the approval from the board and start the process. That we share the profit and loss. Let's say that the homeowner bought the property and invested, like, let's say it costs 100K. And then when the homeowner is ready to take the ownership, we reappraise. I'm not going into detail that when we do that 70-30% or whatever that time frame is. But when homeowner is ready to take the full ownership, then we appraise the house, and appraisal is done by a professional organization. We don't do it. We don't have any expertise. So, and based on that appraisal, we determine that what was the purchase price and then what is the now value, and do the math. And if it is profitable, let's say we bought 100K and the profit is 50K. We look into the maintenance, the second bullet, that if there was any expenditures that we approved, and then let's say changing the roof, remodeling the bathroom or the kitchen. Those are approved expenditures that the homeowner is allowed to do it. And then we subtract that. Let's say the homeowner invested about for the bathroom, 10K. So 50K, we take the 10K out from there, that's 40K. 40K is the profit. And that's we share. 70%, 30%, 70% goes to the homeowner and 30% goes to Ameen Housing. If we go the other way, that the loss is 50K, so, and then the same scenario exists, the Ameen Housing pay the homeowner the 30% of that. So his amount get reduced. So that's the basic thing, but we can go into more detail with the other examples. So that's maintenance and major maintenance type of thing, and like the Shaik says, if you change the doorknob or those minor things, painting it, that we don't do that. Because that's considered as a part of your regular maintenance that you need to keep up to date. The other thing is we did with the Shaik Salasavi's recommendation was the sharing the cost of either the real estate tax or other expenditures that some homeowners have sometimes. And he says that you don't have to share that with the exact percentage of the investment. It can be anything. And we decided to go with the rent when we appraised the rent, and that's again, the rent is from the professional organization. When we appraise the rent, we subtract 7% from the rent, and we say this portion you can use for your real estate tax. That's the portion that Ameen Housing will give it to you. So that's how we are sharing that part. Hardship consideration, and we have done that all the time, we do that, and today we have a couple of members that sometimes the member lost a job and have no income. So we say that, all right, we're not going to kick you out, that's we are a partner, and then the whole intent here is to help the members to buy the house. So if he cannot pay, he or she cannot pay the full rent amount, by the way, that full rent amount includes the Ameen's portion and homeowner's portion, which goes directly towards the equity. So we asked him that if he can pay the Ameen Housing portion, that's the minimum payment he will do. That we waive those portions. Obviously that's time-based. That's okay. 6 months. Let's go for 6 months, and then we extend it depending on how long that go. Even if that is not possible, and obviously the no member can have anything without the at least 20% now equity, because we don't do that, the member has to have that. So that much equity is already there. If member cannot even pay that, then we go on the negative side. We take this portion from the equity and put it on the Ameen Housing side, so that help the members. So that's far we go. So like I said, that no member can purchase house unless it has from today's at least 20% of his equity. Title now falls on the both Ameen Housing and homeowners. The rest, other than not one single party can do without the agreement of the others. This year, in 2012, we bought 5 houses. The dividend also went up 12.65%. New member, we have 70 new members last year. So same thing with the fundraise, we raised more, and asset value goes with that. We have houses in all the other counties, and you can see the map. Today, we only allow the purchasing of the home in California, but there's no restriction on the membership. Member can reside in any state, but the home can only be purchased, and that's just because of the limitation that we have as board members. So that is a number that I already mentioned. So this is the graphical. So this is the dividend, and you can see, and then that from 2005 on, and even before that, because we cannot fit everything, we should not be fitting everything. This is the last 80 years. So every quarter we are profitable. And this is the comparison between the investment and asset value. So, and from here, you can also see that the equity is more than the investment, so we are more secure than nobody can walk out, and nobody will walk out with that much money invested in there. We will be looking into that if we can expand it and how far can we go is all depends on the as we all of you know probably that we have bought 3 houses for the Ameen housing because the funds were available, which also helped us in improving the dividends. We have already bought 3 homes. One is right now we are processing it, so hopefully we'll get it soon. If not in 2 weeks, probably this month we'll get the 4th one. Any question? Did I answer the question that Barbara has in the maintenance? Is there any other questions?
Excuse me.
You're next. How much time do we have? 5 minutes?
7 minutes.
No.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I guess given the positive financial outcome, I personally don't mind being stuck with the board members for another couple of years. So congratulations and thank you for your hard work. I want to get a sense of the board feeling towards an issue that was brought up before, which is going public with this model. I think compared to the performance of...
I can't hear you.
An issue that was brought up before, which is going public with this model. If this model is patented and legally protected as an intellectual property and taken out in the public, where you can basically have unlimited funds from the public pool, it's a profitable business, and I guess it will be a revolution in the home financial world in North America. So what is the board's perspective currently on going forward in this direction?
If you remember, there was one time when there was a presentation on TV or the radio, and then we got the mass emails and from non-Muslims also. So we wanna balance that with the ensuring that the reason that organization was created is to avoid the riba. And the intent of all the members that are coming in is also same, because that organization can be taken over by anybody. If we go, so we have to be careful, and we always think about that, how can we make that possible. At the same time, we have to be careful that the organization stays with the intent that to buy the house for the members and avoid the riba. Yeah, we can talk about also if there's anything you have or recommendation, we can also work on that.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Regarding the position, the waiting list, So when they send a notice out that my position in the waiting list is number 3, I'm supposed to be prepared to purchase the house. So I have to wait till my turn become the number 1. So I feel like it's a time frame is not enough, or maybe it's just like conflict of buying the house in that short time. You know, it takes sometimes a few months to buy a car. So what about house?
See, we have to balance it. It's not an ideal situation. You may not get what you're looking for in 2 months. We allow about 60 days. But because of the limitation of the funds, we can also not afford to have that funds, because we don't authorize the members to go in and look for the house unless we have the whole money that need to be put into the escrow. Because once you look for the house and you get the deal next day and you're ready to go to the escrow, we already promise you that we'll fund it. So money has to be there. If we lock that money for 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, then there's no dividend on that money. That's dead money. To avoid, so that's why we put that time limit that we let the member know when members reaches to the number 3, that there are 2 members ahead of you, but your time is coming. If you do the math, right now the average is 5 homes per year. That's what we did last year, right? So it's about 2.5 months out, you know, that much amount time that we take to buy the one house. If you're notified 4 months, 6 months ahead of time, so you can do some research or some pre-work that which area you're looking for. But the time right now is locked for the 60 days that will give you the 60 days to purchase the house, because right now that's the agreement that we have among the board that this is a time that we can still maintain the dividend and money in the bank for the homeowner. If we have more fun, then there will be not a problem. But right now we have about 20 inactive list. So the people are ready. It's just the funds, because the limitation is because of the funds.
So I just need to limit the questions to only 2 remaining questions before the salah, and then please feel free to again come back again after salah if you want to ask him any of the board more questions, inshallah, for salah.
I just want to rearticulate the question brother I asked from the Shaik, how much collateral loss an investor, I'm not, let's say, from an investor perspective, I'm not a home buyer, I'm not a buyer for a home, I'm just investing in Ameen housing. Since we have, alhamdulillah, I have not seen any losses yet. However, if God forbid, we have seen such a loss, how collateral loss an investor is going to have while having invested money in your
Brother Mustafa.
So first of all, let's put it this way: your money is, alhamdulillah, going to be first of all by Allah. I think it's really, I really taking this from believing in it, because all of us, the board members, are only here because and we will volunteer our time and work only to one thing, inshallah, that we expect that from Allah. None of us are taking money from thing or any benefit from us. Okay, so I feel myself there's a blessing in everything, seriously. Okay, but let's talk about practical thing. Okay, alhamdulillah, we have 16 years in business. So think about it. There is people in with Ameen housing today. They bought their property when the property was say 200K. Okay, and when we go to the appraisal again, that property is say 700K. So that's 500K is your guarantee of that you have huge profit versus losses that come from the recent run. They say that actually, which has happened by the way, that we have people that who bought their houses which are kind of expensive and went through the last couple of years when they went down. Okay, we limit losses in 2 ways. When we come to losses, we don't. The losses is, think about it, really on paper, because instead of getting appreciation, okay, of a house, it's going to depreciate. Okay, so what will happen instead of getting already the appreciation of the money in rent and future appreciation, we don't get that. So think about it, your loss is kind of 0 to slightly negative in only one house or 2 houses. But since we have close to 30 houses, majority of them kind of really far and then still going up. So even when we have this should kind of go down, it goes down to 3 or 4 houses of the 30 houses. So on average, you are gonna more important.
Excuse me. Assalamu alaikum. There is a silver Mercedes outside the parking lot, outside the main entrance. License plate 4S MP 856. Kindly remove it. We need to have some electrical work done around it. So we need the space there, please. That's Mercedes, silver Mercedes, license plate 4S MP 856. Jazakumullah khairan.
Finally, the most important thing, your money is guaranteed for the fact is that majority of the dividends that we distribute is coming from the rent. So even if the house itself goes down, it doesn't matter because the person living in the house will still pay rent and then you are still guaranteed your dividends.
Well, Mustafa.
I have to stop here because of the salah. Then please feel free to come after salah, inshallah.